It's a feeling all too many of us are familiar with. We fall into bed hoping for a good night's sleep, only to be kept awake by our partner's snoring.
Apparently 10 million of us snore, and it can cause marital problems and ill health. We sent our reporter Keith Doyle, a self-confessed snorer, to see if anyone could help.
He's got a big mouth which has got him in no end of trouble. Even while asleep, former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, still can't be quiet.
I think my snoring has got worse as the years have gone by. I single-handedly have kept the Sauvignon Blanc wine industry going. And there is absolutely no doubt there is a link between too many glasses of the vino and heavy snoring.
4 months ago, he had an operation to stop his snoring, which he said was unbelievably painful and didn't work. I'm one of Britain's 10 million snorers. Apparently, it's mainly down to the size of your uvula.
If you look at the back of your throat, that little dangly bit that hangs down in the middle, that's called the uvula. Then either side, you've got the tonsils, okay? And they make up the soft palate. Now that whole area, including the base of the tongue, the back of the throat, which we call the pharynx, the nose, the tonsils, and the soft palate, all vibrate because of air flowing over them, and that's what causes the noise of snoring.
Strips, sprays, even surgery can help solve a problem which is known to drive couples apart, but there are simpler solutions.
Stop smoking, reduce the amount of alcohol that you're drinking, particularly close to bedtime, lose some weight, because we know that people who are overweight are much more likely to suffer with snoring.
But snoring's not just a mild irritant. It can be a sign of something far more serious. Here at the Clinical Research Centre at the University of Surrey, they look at the most serious sleeping disorders.
Well, I wouldn't usually be encouraged to fall asleep on the job, but today is different. Now I'm all wired up for my polysonography test. All I have to do is try to fall asleep. Good night.
I only had a quick nap, but in the control room, they spend their nights watching sleepers sleep. By looking at brain waves, respiratory movements and oxygen in the blood, they can determine how seriously snoring is affecting someone's sleeping pattern.
So, for example, in somebody like yourself, you can see that we have here is repeated and quite loud snoring, and this is what we would call a simple snorer. Not too serious, not too severe. What we're more concerned about is when somebody, for example, has a snort, then pauses for a few moments and then starts snoring again. That's what we call obstructive sleep apnea. During these periods here where you see the flattening in the sound trace, and what's actually happening is that they're not breathing.
This is obviously quite dangerous then, is it?
This has a potential to be very dangerous.
So, snoring is no joke. But despite all the research and remedies, us snorers remain part of a very big club. Keith Doyle, BBC News.
And Alan and Marianne Davey join us now. They're members of the British Snoring and Sleep Apnea Association. One of them, well, is a snorer, was a snorer.
Can be a snorer.
And so the other one is then a sufferer.
That's right.
Yes, OK. What worked? Or what works?
Well, for me, it's a mandibular advancement device. It's this small thing that goes in my mouth.
It's a gum shield.
Sort of. It's got a titanium screw to adjust the amount that my lower jaw's brought forward. But I put this in my mouth during sleep. Obviously, my teeth are bedded into this. And
But can you sleep with that?
absolutely, I sleep better not snoring than I do snoring.
Can you demonstrate?
Can I demonstrate a snore?
No, well, could you just pop it in your mouth? It just looks, you know, rather uncomfortable and intrusive.
This is mine,
Okay.
which is, you know, has got my teeth in it, so it's a little bit like my false teeth, but it goes in.
And that's comfortable to sleep with that in?
Really?
And it stops you snoring? Sorry, you can't speak now.
Mary, is it more of a man's problem than a woman's problem?
Yes, it is. We recently conducted some research and we found there were 15 million snorers in the UK.
Yeah.
10.5 million of them are men.
Now, why is that? Because they drink more and they're more likely to be overweight, that sort of thing?
Well, that's correct. Overweight is probably the predominant thing. And for men, of course, they tend to put on weight around the neck area. Whereas as women, we tend to put weight on the hips, and that doesn't affect our snoring. But for men, yeah, that's right.
Okay. Anything that crowds the airway is a problem.
And how many people would find this particular solution would work for them? Because there are lots of suggestions for ways to deal with snoring.
Many different causes of snoring, therefore many different solutions. So I'm afraid I couldn't really categorise how many people would have tongue-based snoring, but I can say that there are an awful lot of people do benefit from this device. Many people snore simply because they let their mouth drop open during sleep. And for those, this is such a simple treatment because it solves the problem straight away.
So this is like a sticker.
Tape.
A smiley-shaped chin-up strip.
A smiley-shaped chin-up strip.
Keeps your mouth shut.
No, it's very difficult to talk to you like this.
And that will keep your mouth closed.
It will.
Does it not affect your breathing in any way? As long as your airways and your nose are clear?
Yes, if you've got a blocked nose...
If you've got a blocked nose, it's not something for you. You need to fix your blocked nose in any event for us.
Marianne, lavender, somebody suggested, the smell of.
Well, it might work for some people. I don't think there's any clinical evidence that it will help with snoring.
Tennis balls in your pyjamas?
Now, that's an interesting one, you know, because theoretically, some people only snore when they're on their back. So if you've got a tennis ball in your back, you're going to be forced onto your side and you may stop snoring. But practically, of course, all you'll end up with is a backache and snoring. So theoretically, it's quite good, but practically, it's not really a good thing to do.
Alan, how long did you suffer? And Marianne, how long? Because you were married, of course.
Oh,
yes.
We've been married for 35 years.
And that's why you're interested in this and part of the association. But how many years did you both suffer?
10, I think. About 10.
Very many years,
About 10
yes.
before we managed to get it fixed. So it was...
Was it threatening a relationship?
Yes, it was. And in those days, Alan, we were only in our 20s, so he didn't fit the snoring profile. He was young, slim, fit, didn't smoke, didn't drink. And we didn't know why he snored because nobody knew about snoring in those days.
Somebody's mentioned playing the didgeridoo. I mean, because you strengthen the muscles in your throat and the glottis. This is from Lucette Bronk in Holland.
Yeah. I think there's a...
Circular breathing technique.
It sounds fantastic.
Yes. A little more research is needed on that
well,
one,
also,
I think.
there aren't that many didgeridoos on the market at the moment.
No, I expect they're quite
not many.
expensive too. Circular breathing, why not?
It
You know,
probably needs a lot of
saxophonists.
practice as well, I would think, on that one.
You're saying, Alan, that once you can find the cause, and there are specific causes for each individual snorer, then it's easier to find the solution.
It is.
How easy is it to get the cause of your snoring diagnosed?
Well, our website, britishsnoring.co.uk, on the website we have some tests that people can do to try to determine what's causing their snoring. They're simple tests, but they will point them in the right direction. But people shouldn't ignore the fact that snoring is sometimes caused by more than one thing. So it's multifactorial. So if they think it's this, and it might be that, treat the one that they think it is, and if that doesn't work wholeheartedly, treat the one that might be that as well, and that should lead to a solution.
Acupuncture ring?
No.
No.
No. Really, why not?
Absolutely not.
It doesn't do
Snoring
anything.
is a physical problem, and an acupuncture ring will just wake you up, and you don't snore when you're awake.
Acupuncture does treat physical problems.
Yes, the pressure point. You see, is it correct? Surely, if you connect with the right pressure point.
There is no clinical evidence to support the theory that acupuncture rings work.
Okay.
Cynthia suggests a swift kick to whatever part of the anatomy is nearest.
Yes, got plenty of
Well,
bruises
Alan
on
still
the-
has the scars, I have to say.
Yeah, it works every time, but even a snorer needs to sleep, you know.
Alan and Marianne Davey, thanks very much indeed for joining us this morning. 9:30.
Just a quick question. I haven't asked you. Indelicate, possibly. Then you get to ask me. Do you snore?
I don't know. I'm asleep at the time.
I can snore without actually falling asleep. I've noticed that. I can start snoring before I fall asleep.
A lot of women say
Yeah,
that when they're heavily pregnant, they are accused of snoring.
Yes.
And that's I think, is probably the only time I have been guilty.
Okay.
Sorry,
I
Dom.
haven't had that particular problem.
Of course.